Okay, as you all know, Donald Trump has never exactly been shy about his contempt for the idea that we have three co-equal branches of government, something you learn when you're in elementary school. But in his view, all power should ultimately rest with the person sitting behind the resolute desk, and especially if that person is him, of course. We got a glimpse of his thinking during his first administration when he claimed that Article 2 of the Constitution gives him, quote, the right to do whatever he wants as president. It does not grant that. And during the 2024 campaign, he surrounded himself with people who advocated for some pretty extreme views of presidential power. Chief among them was the guy now serving as his vice president, J.D. Vance, who floated this piece of advice back in 2021.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And when the courts, because you will get taken to court, and then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
I mean, in other words, we can't say they didn't warn us, everyone. He was sort of warning us there, I guess. And so just a few weeks into this new administration, 3 to be exact, we are quickly seeing what it is like to have a president who is willing to simply ignore the law when it suits him. We saw that as Trump tried to unilaterally revoke the bedrock principle of birthright citizenship, freeze spending that is constitutionally appropriated by the legislative branch, shut down agencies that were legally created by Congress, and fire career civil servants who are protected by the law. I mean, the goal here of all of that is to steamroll a system that, again, is based on three co-equal branches of government. And with a Congress controlled by a Republican Party that Donald Trump owns, that's the legislative branch, the only branch left to check his executive powers is the judiciary. And on that front, there is a lot they are trying to keep up with, almost too much some days. I mean, just today, a federal judge in Massachusetts heard arguments on the legality of the Trump administration's unprecedented buyout program, designed to coerce federal workers to leave their jobs. Another federal judge blocked Trump's executive order to ignore the Constitution and end birthright citizenship, the third judge to do so. Another federal judge halted the administration's cuts to the National Institutes of Health, and the head of the Office of Special Counsel, an independent federal ethics agency, sued Trump, alleging he was unlawfully fired. Again, everything I just went through, all of that happened today. Stay with me now, because on Friday, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to stop some aspects of its attempts to shut down USAID. Then on Saturday, a federal judge temporarily blocked Elon Musk's Doge crew from accessing sensitive Treasury Department payment systems. The judge in that case cited, quote, the risk that the new policy presents of the disclosure of sensitive and confidential information and the heightened risk that the systems in question will be more vulnerable than before to hacking. Seems like a fairly reasonable concern to me. And yet, that was the decision that basically set MAGA world's hair on fire. Republican Senator Tom Cotton called the judge an outlaw who should be forbidden from hearing any more cases against Trump. Utah Senator Mike Lee said the decision had the feel of a judicial coup, to which, by the way, Elon Musk responded, yes. And Musk also reposted a message suggesting that he and Trump should defy the court's order. And then Trump's own vice president, the guy you just saw a few minutes ago in that clip from 2021, came in with this, and I quote, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Now, the word legitimate is doing a whole lot of work in that statement. As Yale Law School grad J.D. Vance should know, and I suspect he does know. I mean, courts do make those decisions. It's literally the role of the judicial branch to determine what is legitimate and what is not, what is illegal and what is not. That's literally their job. Now, Donald Trump is not a graduate of Yale Law School, or of any law school for that matter, but he does agree that this judge should not be allowed to stop him.
When a president can't look for fraud and waste and abuse, we don't have a country anymore. So we're very disappointed with the judges that would make such a ruling. No judge should frankly be allowed to make that kind of a decision. It's a disgrace.
Guys, they are not being subtle at all. And as we watched those comments from Trump and Vance and their allies in Congress over the weekend, it was clear that they were laying the groundwork to openly defy court orders. And today, a judge said they already have. Today, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration has been violating a previous court order to lift the blanket spending freeze on federal grant programs. To put it plainly, the Trump administration froze spending. A judge told them to unfreeze it. And according to this judge, They didn't. And that kind of puts us in uncharted territory. In fact, some Democrats and legal experts say it leaves us smack dab in the middle of what they're calling a constitutional crisis. And look, I know phrases like that can sometimes sound vague and abstract and academic. But as I said, this country relies on a system of checks and balances between three co-equal branches of government for good reason. So when the Trump administration ignores that principle, when it defies the judiciary and dares the courts to enforce their orders, it is threatening the Constitution itself, hence a constitutional crisis. Starting us off tonight is retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. After retiring from the federal bench, she became a professor at Harvard Law School. Judge Gertner, thank you so much for taking the time. You're the perfect person to help us make sense of what is happening here. So let me just start with what we saw today, because for the first time, we saw a federal judge accuse the Trump administration of defying a court order. And the judge said the White House has not complied with an order to release federal funding that it had frozen. I just want to pause on that because it feels to me, I'm not a lawyer, I'm certainly not a judge, feels very significant to me. But you were a federal judge. What do you think?
I think it is significant, but your introduction was suggesting that there's something very academic about it, and it's really very, very straightforward here. Trump had a lawful way to do all of this. Yeah, he had a lawful way to do all of this. He has the Congress. There are steps that one can follow. There are rules to be followed, and all he did is completely ignore that and ignored his own Congress, which is really something that should give all of us pause, and issued these executive orders, which Dahlia Lithwick describes as like letters to Santa. They were badly drafted, and half the time, he didn't have the authority to do it. When a federal judge issues an order, the federal judge is making a determination for a preliminary order that there's a likelihood of success on the merits, so it has to be a strong case. Judges don't do this out of the air. And furthermore, that there has to be irreparable harm. And the notion that judges across the country have done this really should give this government pause, that they have done what they've done is not just mildly illegal, but very, very illegal. And judges have recognized that. To your point about this comment about, how federal judges have no business dealing with legitimate executive actions, as you said, legitimate is the point here. What they are doing isn't even close to legitimate.
Yeah,
will they defy it?
That's the question. I mean, first of all, it is literally their job. Let me ask you this question, because on the defy it, because this judge began this order by citing a Supreme Court case that says people who defy orders like this risk being held in criminal contempt. And we went through kind of a version of this last year. What does that look like, and what can it look like for a sitting president and a sitting administration?
Well, I mean, it could look like a range of things. It could look like fines. It's a little hard to imagine that Elon Musk will be deterred by a fine, but it could be fines. You could be, civil contempt would be, you could be jailed until you have remedied the situation. But no one ever gets to that. And as I said, particularly here where the illegality is really clear, there is no question about it. If they don't like these rulings, they can appeal. And Trump certainly knows how to do that. So the notion that they would be so there were processes to follow in order to do what he wanted to do, and he's basically blowing through that. In addition, if there are rulings that he doesn't like, he can appeal. The notion that he would just defy says something very troubling about this president and his administration.
No question. And he obviously hasn't appealed it, as you said. That is a legitimate process that anyone can go through or approach. If he appeals it, a lot of people throw out this notion that this question about executive power could go to the Supreme Court. And that's where it could land. I don't know if you agree with that. But what do you think? I think there's a lot of skepticism, probably among a lot of people watching, that the 6-3 conservative court would rule the right way. What are you watching for, and how do you think they would look at this question?
Well, there's a structural problem, which is that the Supreme Court is not equipped to deal with the 45 cases that are percolating through the court, right? They'll take one or two. They'll take maybe one, and they'll take birthright citizenship. They may take the impoundment cases. Again, with this administration and with this court, I'm not sure I can predict anything, but it would really be extraordinary if they gave him the power that he is seeking. It would just be extraordinary on both birthright citizenship and on the impoundment question. I have been surprised by this court, but still, that would be essentially enabling a coup. It's not a judicial coup that we're seeing. It's an executive coup. And if the Supreme Court went along with it, they would be enabling that as well.
Judge Nancy Gertner, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Before we go to break, I just want to give you all a quick reminder to subscribe to our new podcast. It's out today. It's called The Blueprint. It's a place for me and my guests to explore how Democrats can win again in the age of Trump. The first 2 episodes dropped this morning with Maryland Governor Wes Moore and JFK's grandson, Jack Schlossberg.